Welcome to this lesson in which we are going to set up our RTS project. Now, this project will kind of follow us throughout the whole course, and we will always try to apply some little thing that we learned through the lessons on this project. Now, sometimes there is more to do, sometimes there is not very much to do, and those will be just very tiny steps. However, we will try to complete this step by step and then have a final nice UI screen. Now, in the video before, I warned you that this is an optional video where there will be nothing really particularly new in here, and I will not be hassling or trying to be like very time efficient here. We will just slowly go through a couple of things that we find in this UI and try to give us some starting point for that. And you will basically be able to see all the steps that I'm doing here. That will kind of be some kind of live practice, and you can see how I would do this, and then maybe you can have your own ideas how you would do that. So let's just get started here. We are in the Unity editor. Now we are here in the 1.13 version, so the newer version. And for that newer version, there is one little thing that I noticed, because I originally made this a version of this RTS project in the older version. There was, I think, 1.3 that I had. And there was one tiny little change. I don't know if this happens all the time, but for me, it happened. Now, when we just set up our UI toolkit thing as we do normally, we could add a empty game object, or we can just immediately add this UI document game object. Now it's asking for our panel settings, and it then sort of created our panel settings automatically. But now what I had on those panel settings, and that's here the case as well, in the previous version where I actually worked on this, I had a DPI set to 144, and that worked much better for that project. So I will also do that here. Apart from that, I think everything should be okay. And so our basic kind of game view setup is done here. Our scene setup, the only thing that we now have to do is to actually create a UXML file and work on it. Now let's again have a quick look at our screenshot and what we actually want to do. And let's just think, what are we going to do for the setup? Now, we are not going to do any of those contents here, any of those specific text or labels or those buttons or this list, all those images. This will all come later. What we want to do now is just to have this basic container setup, kind of those panels, those semi-transparent panels that you can see here. We will set all those up and basically have our general layout set up. And then in the upcoming lessons, in the other chapters, we will just fill those things with certain components and with certain kind of special things that we identify here. Yeah, so let's just do that now. The first step, how I would approach this, if someone would give me this as a kind of mock-up and tell me, okay, realize that, implement this in Unity, I would kind of see, okay, basically like at the very first level, I'm having sort of two containers here. One container is this one, because when you look at those elements, they are kind of aligned horizontally, right? You have like this, for example, is one element, and then just like that, you have your boxes kind of here, one next to each other, and they are all aligned horizontally. So that means when we treat the whole thing as one container, I think that would be a good start. And along the same lines, then the second container would be down here. So let's just start with that. Now let's go back to Unity. And obviously, one thing that we also do is set the background on the whole thing. So that will also be a good point to start. So let's go back into Unity. I haven't even opened UI Builder here. So that's really a kind of virgin project. Now let's open UI Builder. let's give ourselves some space. And now one other thing we have to do is go to the game view, and I think what worked very good is this full HD thing for me here. So let's just choose that. We are obviously not going to care about responsiveness and stuff like that right now. I think this thing would even be a little bit responsive, but this is definitely not a focus right now. We cannot do everything at once. So let's go back into here and say match game view. And this will be our starting point. Okay, two more organizational issues, sort of. For one, I will try to have a subfolder for kind of every lecture where we edit this. So I will try to have those things to be contained, self-contained, kind of for one lesson. Now you obviously don't have to do that. I don't know if that makes sense for you actually. I just think it's easier if you, when you then download the whole project, that you can see what was actually changed in the chapters. So that's the way I will organize it. And so for now, for our initial thing, I will just work in this folder here. And one other note for later, now I will now add this background image that we will be using because it's just a blurred out screenshot. But I will not add the other kind of bigger images that I will be using. Those are not stolen or I don't know, scrapped off of some images or some games. They are found on some free image websites, like similar to Unsplash or something like that. However, I cannot be 100% sure what the origin of those images is, and I don't want to share them through GitHub because like it's not I think in 99% there would probably be no problem with that, but I can just not have 100% guarantee that one of them that I'm actually allowed to put them on GitHub and publish them in a way. So that's why you will just have to find your own images for that. But for the background, I think this shouldn't be a problem. So let's just create a folder here, image. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Oh, it wanted me to actually save the UXML automatically. So actually, that's a good idea. So let's just do that. And let's say layout initial. Okay. And now let's go into this image folder and actually import the background. Now you can see this is just a blurred screenshot. Just a second. Now what we need is a main container. Let's just call this main container. No, just want to make sure that I have the naming as in my other project. So capital C. And now let's have this stretch across the whole canvas. And now we go to background, image, and what are we looking for? Background blur, just like that. Let's save this, and why not take a look at it in the game view already. Okay, well, looks nice. Back to UI Builder. And now we need those two containers that we identified, the top one and the bigger on the top, the bigger one on the top, and some smaller one at the bottom. So our main container should have a row orientation, sorry, column orientation. It does, obviously, by default. So this first element will be the top container. And let's just set its orientation to row. And let's now duplicate it and call the other one bottom container. And now let's grab this one and set its flex basis. One way we could do that is set the flex basis to 80%, because basically that's how big kind of the proportions that we wanted to have. And then it would make sense to give the bottom container the other 20%. That way we have the whole screen covered no matter what happens, basically. Let's again have a quick look at our screenshot, and now we can see what we could do now is we could say, now we want those things to be spreaded around somehow, so they are not, you cannot use one of those presets like, I don't know, space around or something, because they are kind of weirdly spread out, those containers. But we could say like, this now could be one subcontainer, and this here could also be one subcontainer. So let's just do that. So what we could do is add two elements here and call them, I don't know, let's say top left, because it's in the top container and now it's the left portion of the top container. Now this might not be a super brilliant naming pattern. I didn't actually think about this too much. So if you want to obviously use other names, and top middle. And now for the top left container, what we want to do is set its basis to 20%. Its direction should be column, that's fine. Wrap is fine. Now let's go to the align thing. I don't know if you remember from the screenshot, those things were kind of pushed down. So we want to use flex end for justify content. And then we wanted to push the other stuff kind of to the right. So we give it a right margin of 10%.